Hey guys, my name is Anthony, and in today's video I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. It's going to be called F1 2020 Quick Tips, and basically these series of videos are going to go over some of the more minute, some of the more smaller details about F1 2020 that people are still curious about, but there's not really a lot of videos on YouTube talking about them because of how small they are. Usually you really couldn't make an entire video about these unless they were literally a couple of minutes long, so that's what we're going to start doing, just start talking about the minute details when it comes to F1 2020. So if you want to see more videos like this, make sure to hit the like button, stick around by subscribing to the channel, and also make sure to comment down below if there's anything, one of the smaller details when it comes to the game that you don't quite understand yet, but you want a video on it just so that you can get an explanation by someone who's played the game a little bit longer than you. So getting into today's video, we're going to be talking about setups. More specifically, we're going to be talking about what the actual difference is between time trial and race setups, because I know there's a lot of you out there who are curious to know what is the actual difference between time trial and race setups. Why can't I just go on time trial, take the setup from the fastest guy, and then use it in a race and win? So let's talk about that right now. So in my personal opinion, from what I've seen on time trial and from what I've used personally in league races, the main difference between a time trial setup and a race setup is the rear stability of the car. If you may noticed, if you've ever used a time trial setup in GP mode or online, the main complaints that you hear about them are that they're too oversteery, and there's a reason for that. And that's because when it comes to time trial, you're basically in the perfect conditions when it comes to the track's in perfect conditions, the time of day is in perfect conditions, the temperature of your tires perfect conditions, the amount of fuel your car has is basically the right amount of fuel, so you're able to push the car a lot more, and there's no damage in time trial as well, so you're really able to push the car more than you would in a race, mainly because of the fear of not being able to damage your car and stuff like that. So when it comes to fixing the rear stability of the car for a race, there's a couple of main differences and some other differences as well, and the main differences are your rear wing, your off throttle diff, and your rear anti-roll bar, and some other things to really think about as well, if just in case you do see a big discrepancy in them, is the rear suspension and the tire pressure. Well, the tire pressure is not as much because tire pressures are tire pressures, but the rear suspension more than anything. So what I'm going to do to finalize this video is I'm going to take a look at the difference between my baseline setup for Bahrain that I have in my baseline setup spreadsheet, and then I'm going to compare that to Freddie Rasmussen's time trial setup on the exact same track. So taking a look at the aero, this is probably one of the settings that are there's the least difference in between my race setup, my baseline race setup, and his time trial setup. So for this, my wings is 2.7 wings, whereas his is 2.6. Honestly, I don't really think that will make too much of a difference. You could definitely use 2.6 in a race very comfortably. Next, moving on to the off-throttle, this is where you start to see a little bit of a difference. For my off-throttle, I have 60% with an on-throttle of 50%, and I believe that Freddie Rasmussen has an off-throttle of 54% with a on-throttle of 53%, I believe. So there's quite a big difference, and once again, probably something that you can deal with if you have pretty good car control, if you have pretty good technique in controlling your car. But for most people, 50%, 60% is the default. You can use that and pretty much take that into a 50% race and be completely fine with it. And then moving on to the suspension geometry, this is another big difference. So my baseline setups are right, left, and what I mean by that is maximum right for the camber and maximum left for the toe. Obviously you can play around with that and find what suits you specifically, but that's just a baseline. And for Freddie Rasmussen's time trial setup, he actually has maximum right for the front camber, and then he has maximum left for the rear camber, and then maximum left for the toe, for both the front and rear toe. And then suspensions, I have 2.4, 6.8 and 1.3, so that's 2.4 for the suspension, 6.8 for the anti-roll bar, and 1.3 for the height. Whereas Freddie Rasmussen, now this is probably the biggest difference in my opinion compared to my baseline race setup and his time trial setup, he has 1.11 suspensions, 1.11 anti-roll bar, and 1.3 for the ride height, or 1.4 for the ride height, sorry. And that's the main difference. You really want to be looking at mainly the suspension settings, because the anti-roll bar, the suspensions and stuff like that, that's probably where you're going to see the biggest difference when it comes to time trial versus race setups. And then finally the tires. My tires are 21.8 at the front and 19.9 at the back, and he pretty much has the minimum tire pressures for all 4 tires. So when it comes to time trial setup versus race setups, the main difference is rear stability, and the main ways that you fix that is changing mostly the rear anti-roll bar, making sure that the car is a little bit more stable when it comes to the roll bar. Also, obviously you can change things like the rear wing. You can add more wing to the rear wing aerodynamics. That will of course make the car a little bit more stable, but it will also cause a little bit more drag, so you do want to be careful with that. And obviously you can also change the off throttle as well. That will help throughout mid corners, and that will really help get the car rotated around mid corners. So I hope that this video was informative enough to you guys, and I hope that you guys really leave some suggestions down below on sort of minute details within the game that you really are curious about and you want to know my input on some of those things. So if you like this video, make sure to hit the like button and stick around by subscribing to the channel, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Also, I'm streaming today at 8 PM BST for WOR round 9 at Canada, so I'll see you guys there.